When I look back on that period of my marriage, it feels almost ordinary at first glance, the kind of routine life people envy for its stability but secretly fear for its lack of passion. Emily and I had been together for 5 years, married for 3. We lived in a modest but warm townhouse just outside London, filled with the small comforts of shared life. Photographs from seaside holidays, books stacked unevenly on the shelves, and the soft hum of routines we rarely questioned. Emily was 28 then, with a calm, graceful presence that often disguised the restlessness beneath. She worked as a marketing manager at a mid-sized firm, a job she described as demanding yet stimulating, though I suspected it was more the company than the work that held her attention. When she spoke about her boss, Claire, there was a brightness in her tone, a subtle lift in her expression that I did not fully register at the time. Claire, from the little I gathered, was in her early 30s and carried herself with a confidence that seemed to draw others in effortlessly. Emily mentioned her frequently. How decisive she was in meetings, how she dressed with elegance, how she inspired loyalty from the entire department. To me, it sounded like harmless admiration, the kind one reserves for a mentor. I smiled and nodded whenever her name came up, never imagining that those mentions carried weight beyond casual respect. My own work kept me traveling often. I was in project management for an engineering firm, a position that demanded flexibility and frequent trips out of town. I convinced myself that Emily handled my absences well. She never complained outright, though there were hints I ignored. The way her voice lingered on the phone a little longer at night, the way her eyes dimmed when she watched me pack. At home, our relationship was affectionate but measured. We exchanged kisses at the door, shared quiet dinners, and occasionally watched a film together before bed. Yet beneath that pattern, there was a silence neither of us dared to name. Emily longed for spontaneity, for someone to reach into her world and ignite it, while I, exhausted by travel and deadlines, clung to the comfort of predictability. It was during one of those dinners that her words first set the stage for what was to come. She mentioned, almost casually, that Claire lived not far from us. "She's in the same borough, just a few streets away," Emily said, twirling pasta around her fork. "She joked she might drop by someday if she's ever passing through." I laughed lightly, brushing it aside. "Well, if she does, at least you won't be bored while I'm away." I meant it as a harmless remark, a husband's offhand jest. Emily smiled, but her eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite interpret. The truth is, I never imagined Emily as someone prone to temptation. She had always been thoughtful, steady, the kind of woman who placed loyalty above fleeting impulses. And yet, in quiet moments, I sometimes sensed an energy in her that seemed caged, an eagerness for something unnamed, something I could not always give. The weeks passed, and life resumed its rhythm. I left for another short trip, this one a 3-day assignment in Manchester. Emily kissed me goodbye at the door, her hand lingering on mine a little longer than usual. I mistook it for tenderness. Only later did I wonder if it was hesitation. As the train carried me north, I thought about her, sitting alone in our living room, perhaps with a glass of wine, perhaps scrolling idly through her phone. I told myself she was fine, that she had her work, her colleagues, her boss who seemed to fill her days with purpose. What I did not realize was how proximity, charm, and timing can conspire in ways that unravel even the strongest intentions. That night, while I settled into a hotel room far from home, Emily's world was about to tilt in a direction neither of us could have foreseen. And it began with a simple knock on the door. Emily spent the first evening of my trip in the way she often did when I was away, tidying the house, preparing a light meal, and pouring herself a single glass of wine. The townhouse felt unusually quiet, the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of floorboards emphasizing her solitude. She curled up on the sofa with her laptop, scrolling half-heartedly through emails, though her thoughts drifted more than they settled. The knock at the door startled her. It was firm but unhurried, the kind that suggested confidence rather than urgency. For a brief moment she hesitated, wondering who might call unannounced at such an hour. When she opened the door, her surprise was genuine. Standing on the step, framed by the cool night air, was Claire. "Emily," Claire said warmly. her voice carrying that unmistakable blend of authority and ease. "I was nearby after a meeting and thought I'd drop in. I hope I'm not intruding." Emily's lips parted in a mixture of relief and curiosity. "Not at all. Please come in." Claire stepped inside, removing her coat with a graceful motion, as though she belonged there. The living room welcomed her with its dim lighting, the soft glow of a lamp spilling across the furniture. Emily quickly gathered herself, setting aside her wine glass and gesturing toward the sofa. "It's quieter than I expected," Claire remarked, glancing around. "Your home suits you, warm, understated, elegant." The compliment landed with more weight than Emily anticipated. She found herself smiling, her cheeks warming as she busied her hands with a bottle of wine. "Would you like a glass?" Claire accepted, and soon they were seated close, the stem of the glass glinting between her fingers. Their conversation began with safe topics: work deadlines, the chaos of upcoming campaigns, the usual frustrations of late hours and difficult clients. Yet as the minutes slipped into an hour, the tone shifted. Claire leaned back, her posture relaxed, her eyes fixed on Emily with an intensity that unsettled her. "You do so much for everyone at the office," she said softly. "But I wonder, who looks after you?" Emily's breath caught, though she disguised it with a sip of wine. "I manage well enough," she replied, her voice steady though her heart raced. "You shouldn't have to just manage," Claire countered, her hand brushing lightly against Emily's as she reached for the bottle to refill their glasses. The contact was fleeting, deliberate enough to register yet innocent enough to excuse. The room seemed smaller then, the distance between them collapsing with each exchanged glance. Emily told herself it was harmless, that they were only talking, that the glass of wine explained her warmth. Still, she could not ignore the way her pulse quickened when Claire laughed at her stories, or the way her boss's gaze lingered just a fraction too long. Eventually, the conversation drifted toward Emily's marriage. Claire's tone was careful, almost protective. "You must miss him when he travels," she said. Emily hesitated, her voice quieter now. "I do. It's part of his work, and I understand. But sometimes the house feels emptier than I expect." Claire nodded knowingly. Loneliness has a way of finding cracks, even in the strongest walls. The words hung in the air, heavier than the silence that followed. Emily shifted slightly, torn between the urge to change the subject and the temptation to let the moment expand. Claire leaned forward then, her expression soft but unwavering. "You deserve to feel seen, Emily. Not just as an employee, not even just as a wife, but as yourself." The sentence left Emily unmoored. No one had spoken to her in that way for years, not with such unflinching attention. She looked away, searching for composure, but Claire's presence was insistent, filling the room with a gravity Emily could not ignore. Their knees brushed, a simple accident perhaps, yet neither of them moved back. Emily's heart thudded in her chest, her thoughts tangled between propriety and desire, loyalty and the lure of being truly noticed. The clock on the mantel ticked steadily, marking the seconds that seemed to stretch impossibly long. Emily realized then that the evening was no longer ordinary, that she stood on the cusp of a choice that could not be undone. And as Claire's hand rested gently over hers, Emily understood that whatever happened next would alter the quiet rhythm of her life forever. Emily's hand remained under Claire's, her skin tingling with the warmth of that quiet contact. The moment could have ended there, dismissed as an innocent slip between friends, but Claire did not withdraw. Instead, she let the silence expand, her thumb tracing the faintest line across Emily's knuckles. Emily's breath came shallow, her mind split between conscience and longing. "Claire," she whispered, half protest, half plea. Claire's gaze softened, though her voice carried an edge of certainty. "You don't need to explain. To see you, Emily. That's all." The words struck with the weight of something forbidden yet irresistible. For years, Emily had balanced her life on expectations. Dutiful wife, competent manager, loyal friend. Now, in the glow of lamplight, with Claire's presence pressing closer, those expectations seemed fragile, like glass that could shatter with a single touch. Their eyes locked. Claire leaned in first, slowly, giving Emily space to retreat if she wished. But Emily did not move. When their lips met, it was tentative, a brush of warmth that carried more meaning than any conversation. Emily stiffened, then melted, the taste of wine and the rush of adrenaline mingling until she could no longer tell where fear ended and desire began. The kiss deepened, unhurried yet certain, each second unraveling a thread of restraint. Emily felt her hands tremble as they rose, not to push Claire away, but to steady herself against the inevitable. She knew this was a line she had never intended to cross, and yet, in that instant, all she could think of was the sudden surge of being wanted. They pulled apart briefly, their breaths uneven. Emily's voice faltered. "This isn't right," Claire finished for her, her expression unreadable yet tender. "Maybe not. But it's real." That answer silenced Emily more than any justification could. Real. The word echoed inside her, louder than her doubts, more persuasive than her vows. She kissed Claire again, this time without hesitation, surrendering to the force she had tried so long to ignore. Time blurred after that. They spoke in fragments between stolen kisses, confessions, laughter, words Emily had never dared to say aloud. Claire told her she was beautiful, remarkable, deserving of more. Emily confessed her loneliness, the ache of feeling invisible in her own marriage. Each admission drew them closer, weaving intimacy out of secrecy. When at last Claire rose to leave, the clock had slipped far past midnight. The room was heavy with the weight of what they had shared, the air thick with a silence that felt both dangerous and comforting. Emily walked her to the door, her hand reluctant to let go. Claire paused on the threshold, her eyes steady. "I don't expect promises," she said softly. "Only honesty, with yourself if not with anyone else." Emily nodded, her throat tight, unable to form words. She watched Claire disappear into the night, the sound of her footsteps fading against the quiet street. When the door closed, the house felt changed, as though its walls now held a secret that could never be erased. Alone again, Emily sank onto the sofa, her body buzzing with memory, her heart burdened with guilt. She pressed her palms to her face, torn between the exhilaration of being awakened and the dread of what it meant. She knew she loved her husband, yet she also knew that something within her had been unlocked, something she could not simply push back into silence. The next evening I returned home. Emily greeted me with warmth, her embrace lingering as though to hide what had transpired. I sensed nothing unusual beyond her tired smile, though somewhere in the back of my mind, I registered a faint shift I could not name. Later that night, as I unpacked my bag and Emily moved quietly about the house, I caught myself studying her more closely. The way her eyes avoided mine at certain moments, the way her laughter carried an edge I hadn't noticed before. I brushed it aside, convincing myself it was nothing more than the fatigue of a long week. But deep down, a subtle unease stirred. Something had changed, though I had no proof, no reason to question the woman I trusted more than anyone. And so the secret lingered in silence, hidden behind Emily's careful smile and my blind faith. I did not yet know that the night I wasn't home, and my wife's boss came to visit, had redrawn the boundaries of our marriage in ways that could never be undone.